Greetings, YouTube. I was at the water bubbler the other day, filling up my bottle, and I noticed on the wall there's our little New Hampshire state facts blurb. Gives you federal and state laws about employment, things like that. And I was just kind of glancing at it while my water bottle was being filled up, and I noticed two things that were specific to New Hampshire, and one was the New Hampshire Fair Housing guidelines, and the other was the New Hampshire Employment Guidelines. And I just noticed that there was a discrepancy between the two lists of uh, different groups that were protected by each of these specific laws, and I found that was kind of interesting. So I poked around, I found the list here, so I could actually look at them at home. Um, and the housing here lists categories protected by the housing law in New Hampshire is race, color, national origin, religion, gender, and this is specific to the more conventional definition of masculine and feminine gender identities as assigned at birth. Familial status, disability, and there are three protected classes, which is age, marital status, and sexual orientation. Um, and then we have the hiring guidelines. Like, let me sorry a second. They had these set up differently. Here we go. And these are fall into the category of age, sex, race, color, marital status, physical or mental disability, religious creed, national origin, or sexual orientation. And the employer, quote unquote employer, does not include any employer with fewer than 6 employees, nor any nonprofit, exclusively social club, fraternal or religious association, or religious corporation. Sort of like the religious association could probably be like the Knights of Columbus might fall into the category of that. I'm not positive. Um, and I found this interesting because, first of all, you can actually work for a company this small. My wife used to work for a pottery, a ceramics company that was that small. So while the people there were very cool, the point is that under that number of employees, they could have been discriminatory, um, and it would have been considered all right. I'm not sure why that is allowed, but okay, I don't get it. I don't care. If a company has one employee beyond the owner, there should not be allowed to be discriminated against. That's just me. So you can you can be sure that you are hired. Uh, a gay person can be hired for a job, but there is no provision that anyone gets any protection if they're trans. I found that fascinating because even though they specify gender under one particular area, but they're referring to conventional, again, signed at birth, men, women, that's what most people consider biological sex. Um, that's not what we're discussing here when it comes to trans rights. And New Hampshire, which is fairly extensive when it comes to these lists of things that categories that a person is protected under, and specifically protected classes in the case of um, age, marital status, and sexual orientation. They're not protected if you're trans. Now, some people are going to go start down the line. They'll say, well, there's a difference between well, biological sex determines that kind of. Well, there's a difference between biological sex and gender identity. I know that's a radical concept to some folks, but it still happens to be the truth. And some will say, well, it's the choice thing. That's why. Well, see, there's a number of these things in here which are choice things. Religion, political affiliation. You could go so far as to say a familial status. You could choose to not have children. Okay, now I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but there is some control when it comes to familial status, and of course, marital status is also a choice thing. Now, I'm not saying that people should be discriminated along those lines, but let's face it, some of these are most definitely choice things. Religion and political affiliation are both choice things. I realize that some people are of the opinion that you were born into a particular world view when it comes to religious and political ideology, but you aren't. Those are choices, and those are protected choices. So even if you were to have the skewed view that gender identity is a choice, we already got that covered. Choice things are already covered. The same argument has been used for sexual orientation. Well, it's a choice thing. So, well, look, okay, even if you believe that, which is wrong in both those categories, your gender identity and your sexual orientation are not your choices. But even if you believe that, we've still got you covered with the religious and political affiliation choice things. Um, and New Hampshire is often viewed as a bastion of liberal thought, even though it isn't, because I can tell you right now, it's a deeply conservative place. I know I've lived here for a very, very long time. Um, and yet, trans people don't have any rights here. You could be fired for being trans. You can just not get housing because you're trans. And they can be blatant about it. They could come out right and say, "Oh, I'm not going to hire that person because they're trans, because they're a cross-dresser," or some other wonderfully unpleasant euphemism. Same with housing. Now, I know that a number of my subscribers and viewers are themselves trans, so I'm speaking to the choir in this regard. My ex is trans, and I he would agree. You know, speaking to the choir, he knows exactly what that's like. Um, but I think most people don't understand that. So in New Hampshire, you've kind of, sort of got a bunch of rights here in the state. You know, pretty much covered on every base except the fact that if you're trans, and that doesn't seem fair to me. Why is it how you are is something that can be discriminated against?